one good policy decision, which was made, and a radical decision made by the Special Investment Facilitation Council. The other big challenge faced by the IT industry is lack of skilled manpower. This is the world's fifth largest country in the world. We are the seventh largest market for cell phones. We have literally 1.5 million freelancers. But the IT industry needs specialized skills. Students who once graduate from the university are globally competitive. This is one industry where you can't afford to be mediocre because you're competing in a global knowledge economy. Now, it just so happens that Pakistani universities graduate 75,000 IT graduates every year. That's a very large number. But you look at the IT industry, it only employs 150,000 people. So where are all these 75,000 people going? We must, of course, go back to these universities and make sure that what is coming out of these universities is immediately employable by these IT companies. This IT industry, which only employs about 150,000 people, could grow to literally about 700,000 people. That's what all of our research currently shows. That's the unmet demand for Pakistan's IT skills. It could be literally 7 times its size at this point. But to be able to accomplish that, we need to make sure that we give the IT industry skilled manpower, skilled in skills that are needed by the global competitive tech ecosystem. And for that, we've started 2 large programs working with the Higher Education Commission. Starting this Sunday, we're going to conduct a centralized test across all universities in Pakistan to measure their quality. Students that pass this test will then have a mandatory industry placement before they graduate. So each student would get 6 months of apprenticeship with the industry before they are allowed to graduate. This would be 6 to 9 credit units of academic work in the university. Students would get a stipend from us, and the companies that give them apprenticeship would get cash awards from us. So essentially, through this program, every year, we hope to place as much as 75,000 students measured on a standard quality test in the industry so they're able to get the skilled manpower that they're, at this point, are in desperate need of. At the same time, the IT industry also needs highly skilled manpower, which is certified by international enterprise platforms, Google's and Microsoft's, Cisco's, and so on and so forth. So this year, we're going to train 16,000 people. These are people who already have IT skills, but need international certifications in technologies like the Salesforce, Cisco, Microsoft, Oracle, Financials, etc. We're going to train 16,000 of them through NAVTech. We awarded this program to NAVTech 3 months ago, and on the 25th of this month, they start their first training. And we hope to have these trainings finished in the next 6 months. So the IT industry starting this year will begin to get 100,000 people from us, 75,000 coming from the universities, another 16,000 trained every year in high-end skills. For every software developer that we add with the IT industry, you get $25,000 of additional revenue. That's the global market. With about 200,000 people that we hope to add in the next 2 years, you get an additional $5 billion of export revenue for these companies. Our second constituent are the freelancers who are sitting here. So while our enterprises didn't scale, of course, the largest IT company in Pakistan is about 8,000 people. Compare that with the largest Indian company, about 500,000 people. These young people who graduated from universities and had the skill and education to work, in the global, what is called the gig economy, where instead of getting a job, they could do remote work for $5 a piece or $10 a piece or $20 a piece. They were already, and it's called internet online freelancing, and good about 1.5 million of them are already doing this worldwide. In terms of numbers, Pakistan is the second largest online workforce. India is at number 4. And this is just because of the skill, education, and grit that our youth has, looking for opportunities, employment opportunities, in this case globally, by linking themselves to this gig economy. And these 1.5 million people who we've trained through the e-Rozgar program in Punjab, which I started about 8 years ago, to the DigiSkills program, which we replicated in the federal government about 6 years ago. They now face two problems. 1.5 million of them are trained, but they have no place to go sit and online freelance. And two, they face huge difficulty in getting paid for the little tasks that they do online. For the first challenge that they have, of course, with someone who's making $10 a day or $7.50 a day, which is the average yield for a freelancer right now, they can't afford a 5 lakh rupees laptop. They can't afford to rent an office for a few 100,000 rupees. They can't afford to invest in a generator or uninterrupted internet connectivity. We need to provide them space where they can just show up and work and earn up to $30 a day freelancing or working in this gig economy globally. So for that, we're going to unleash the Pakistan e-Rozgar program. This is a scale-up of a program that we did in Punjab many years ago. I started this in 2014. In 2016, we finally established an e-Rozgar center. We now have 65 centers of e-Rozgar in Punjab. And in these centers, we have trained 80,000 people. And these freelancers have made 25 billion rupees so far. That's just investing in your youth, giving them a direction and a place to go and sit and work. That was Punjab's e-Rozgar program. Now we need to scale that up. We need to scale that up by creating 10,000 of these centers. We created 65 in Punjab. 10,000 of these centers across the country, 5,000 in academic institutions, and 5,000 in private sector. And the plan here is that while working with HEC, we can fund the universities, colleges, schools to convert their computer labs into e-Rozgar centers, but also incentivize the private sector with interest-free loans, for which we just set aside money, where the IT ministry would pick up the interest, but the private sector would get interest-free loans to convert their real estate into co-working spaces or e-Rozgar centers for freelancers. And the idea is that with 10,000 e-Rozgar centers, is a 50 billion rupee program. That's the interest-free loan, the volume of the interest-free loans that are going to be given to the private sector. The IT ministry would pick up the interest. The private sector would get these loans to convert their unutilized real estate, and we have plenty of that in this country, into co-working spaces for freelancers. Additionally, we're going to declare these e-Rozgar centers virtual technology zones so that they're exempt, the income of these e-Rozgar centers run by the private sector exempt from many taxes. That's these special technology zone. And they're all going to be cobbled together into a virtual technology zone and run by the Pakistan Software Expert Board. So if you have unutilized real estate, you conceived a plaza or a shopping mall or an office building or an apartment block, but you can't manage to find a business case for it, and there's plenty of that almost at the corner of every street and road in Pakistan. Here is a business opportunity for you to convert these into co-working spaces for these young people. You could charge them a small rent. We'll give you an interest-free loan, the capex to convert your property into a co-working space, and also give you tax exemption so you can support the youth here. Now, if you have in these 10,000 centers 10 million people, 1 million people freelancing every day and making $30 a day, which is possible. 1 million people in these freelancing centers making $30 a day. That's $10 billion a year. Remember, Pakistan's entire export right now is $32 billion. That would increase your exports by 30%. Just by giving your youth, who are already educated and skilled, an opportunity to go and be part of this global gig economy where they could get remote work, small remote work for this skill and education that they have. Some could maintain a ledger, some design a logo, someone could write content, do social media marketing, voiceovers, medical transcriptions. All of that gets outsourced in the world. The other problem, of course, which everyone's been talking about, is this inability or difficulty to get paid for small amounts of work or small ticket item work that you do online. $10 a piece, $15 a piece. If large companies want to get paid, they get a wire transfer from a large client from US. And with the dollar retention accounts, we've seen there's more of that beginning to happen. But for individual freelancer, they face many problems, starting with a bank not opening their account. We have now come in as the Pakistan Software Expert Board, and with the help of State Bank, we've made policies where as a freelancer, you can now get a bank account. All you need to do is show them evidence that you have an account on Fiverr or Upwork or Elance or Top Talent or Crossover. That's all you need to do. Give them evidence that you do online freelancing. The bank is now mandated to open an account for you. Two, these accounts, much like the IT industry, would have a 50% dollar retention policy, which means that whatever you earn, you can keep 50% of that in dollars. Three, you'll get a debit card from that bank so that you're able to freely spend that money domestically or internationally. And finally, because this is booked now as a freelancer special code that the State Bank has issued, this is booked as part of IT exports, and you'll get the same favorable 0.25% tax as opposed to a 30% tax if you were in another industry. So for the freelancers, in many ways, we've now put them at par with the IT industry as an individual entrepreneur who's wanting to work online. Finally, we've been talking to all these international payment companies like PayPal, Stripe, and Wise to try and figure out a way through which a Pakistani freelancer sitting here could get paid via PayPal or Stripe or Wise. And previously, when we used to go to these companies, our demand was simple. The demand was come and do business in Pakistan. They would always get confused because they don't want to come here, get a regulatory license, and become a peer-to-peer payment service. We have many systems for that. We have Easy Paisa, we have Jazz Cash, we have our own banks, online services, EMIs, digital banks. That's not what they want to do. That's not what they do globally. We were only interested in one use case, which is that a freelancer like you sitting here should be able to accept $10 from a US client who's only willing to pay via PayPal. Right? So therefore, this is a three-part equation. We need to come up with a mechanism through which we can accept, as a freelancer, $10 into some wallet, which then instantly remit that money back into a Pakistani account where it can be kept in dollars and spent that way. So therefore, we actually didn't want PayPal to come to Pakistan. We did not want Wise or Stripe to come to Pakistan. We wanted to invent a mechanism through which a local wallet here is able to accept payments from PayPal, which is what we've been able to now achieve. Starting February, we are going to start the first pilot with 10,000 freelancers in Pakistan. We're sitting here, you'll be able to open a wallet in Pakistan through one of the intermediary companies, and there are two of them, with which you'll be able to accept PayPal payments, which will be instantly remitted to a Pakistani bank account where it'll land as dollars, can be kept as dollars, and you'll get a debit card to spend that money. That will start in February with the first 10,000 freelancers, the pilot, and in March that gets scaled up, and everyone will have access to payments from PayPal and Stripe and Wise in a country like Pakistan. Our third big constituency, of course, is the startups. Now, in Pakistani startups, we did a first startup incubator in the public sector many years ago in Punjab called Plan 9. Now we have 85 startup incubators in Pakistan, 4,000 startups. In just the last 4 years, these startups, by the youth of Pakistan, has raised $800 million from top-tier VCs globally. That's a lot of money for a country that's looking for $1 billion package from multilaterals. Our startups, with their innovation, were able to raise $800 million of investment in the ideas and the grit that they have of wanting to make an innovative business. And in this, the only stumbling block was that we have 4,000 startups coming out of incubators. Only a handful of them go out and raise international venture capital. Most of them stumble at the first stage, which is the $1 to $3 million round, the early stage VC round. And for that, a global VC would look at this, and I see one of them nodding in the audience, look at this and say, too risky. Pakistan, startup, uncertainty, risky. So what can the government do to come in and underwrite or lessen this risk? And we've come in with what we call the Pakistan Startup Fund. This is 2 billion rupees perpetually put into a fund now, which will underwrite about 30% of the investment for an international venture capitalist. We launched this a couple of days ago, and the design is simple. If as a startup, you're able to raise, let's say, $1 million from an investor global investor, venture capitalist. And if they routed their deal through the Pakistan Startup Fund, the international investor would only need to put in $700,000. $300,000 would come from Pakistan Startup Fund as equity-free capital. We won't take any equity in your startup. We don't want to partner with you. We don't want to take any board positions or any stake. We don't want to dilute you. We want to only incentivize international investors who are looking at Pakistan, Indonesia, or Malaysia, and because of the Pakistan Startup Fund, are able to look at this deal and say, because I will only have to put in 70% of the capital, 30% would be co-invested from Pakistan government. This looks like a deal where my risk is hedged. And this is a global formula. It's not something we came up with. This is something that Israel did many years ago. In fact, the US does also, Ireland does this, and many other countries where the government comes in and helps you lower the risk for investments in risky ventures, startups. We're going to put in 2 billion rupees every year into this, through which we hope to get 10 billion rupees of investments into Pakistani startups. And with about 20% stake the international VC would take at this level, we are hoping that this would create a 50 billion rupee per year of value in Pakistani startups. You can get this money starting 1st of March. The money has already been allocated. Pakistan Startup Fund has been created. We inaugurated this a few days ago. Another important sector for us is the telecom sector, which has great potential, and you heard some about that also in this little video. Pakistan could really be a digital corridor hub, just as we are a trade corridor with CPEC. Pakistan could be a digital corridor of connectivity for Central Asian states, China and Russia, because we are the fastest route to connect to the rest of the world for them, to Africa and Europe. We have terrestrial connectivity. They have to go all around us right now. We're submarine cables, and there are 8 of them. If we provided them direct connectivity through our terrestrial cable, and we now have many loops, we could actually lower their latency or time to travel by 6 times. It currently takes them 120 milliseconds to go around us. It would literally only take 20 milliseconds for them to connect via terrestrial route. But with SEO, PTCL, Jazz, and others, we have now laid this fiber in Pakistan. This could be a strategically important asset for us. And the China peace cable is now knocking on our door, and this deal is about to happen. So inshallah, before the end of the tenure of this government, we would do the China transit traffic in Pakistan, which would be a big source of revenue, but also a good use of strategic investment that we made over the last few years. In fact, the PTCL, carrier neutral data center, which is the first building block on top of this fiber optic, goes operational later this month. We are doing this event. The Prime Minister would be invited also. This is on the 28th of this month. That's when we inaugurate our first carrier neutral data center, and we're getting a tier 3 data center operator from China to come and run that for us. This is through PTCL. We've also now allocated about 300 megahertz of spectrum in Pakistan to finally introduce 5G in this country. It's been long on the anvil. All the telecom operators in Pakistan combined only use about 273 megahertz of bandwidth. And we're sitting on about 600 megahertz of unutilized spectrum in this country. We must get that spectrum allocated to the private sector so that people are able to get 4G access beyond the 15-20 cities in which we see it. And we've just allocated the 300 megahertz. We've had a first auction advisory committee meeting. We are now writing the TORs for a consultant to come in, and I'm hoping at this pace, if this continues, in July, August, Pakistan should be able to do an auction of the spectrum that we have, 300 megahertz, which essentially would double the spectrum that the telecom operators currently have available to them, including a spectrum band, which would help them introduce 5G in Pakistan. Pakistan only has about 164,000 kilometers of fiber for connectivity within the country. We hope to lay another 200,000 kilometers of fiber in the country. By doing so, and this is an important conversation, by doing so, and the international data says that for every 10% increase in mobile broadband connectivity, and currently it's 43%. So for every 10% increase in mobile broadband connectivity, you get an additional 2.5% increase in your GDP, which basically means about $10 billion a year for Pakistan. So if we are able to improve our mobile broadband connectivity from 43% to 53%, we'll get an additional $10 billion in our GDP. That's about 2.5% of the GDP. And this is now looking possible because of the right-of-way policy that the Prime Minister very kindly approved in in a cabinet meeting yesterday, where we now have a right-of-way policy, which means that we've standardized the policies, rates, and frameworks for private sector to lay fiber in Pakistan. Now they don't have to go and knock on 15 different doors or pay 15 different rates. They would fall into one standardized regime where they can now go and lay fiber, whether that's with an NHA highway or the Pakistan Railways railway track, or it is over a bridge, or in a housing colony, or in a highway authority. All of that has now been brought into one regime, which we call the National Fiberization Policy. And through that, this would begin to happen. And finally, our final constituent is the handset manufacturers. Now, India does about $10 billion worth of export every year of handsets. Pakistan is the 7th largest market for handsets in the world. We have 196 million cellular connections in this country. That's a very large number. But even though we have about 35 handset manufacturers in Pakistan, they don't manufacture as many phones as we need, of course. We've only manufactured about 60 million, 6 crore phones in Pakistan, and we've exported about 1 crore. We've promised this industry repeatedly we'll give them incentives for exporting their phones, and we've not been able to do it. But inshallah, in the next cabinet meeting, finally, we'll do the 3 policies that the handset manufacturers have been waiting for, which is the R&D allowance, tariff differentials, and local deletion. And through that, we hope to get now many exports happening out of Pakistan. The groundwork of that is done between us, the Ministry of Commerce and Industries. So I think now at this point in time, what we started about 6 months ago as a journey for reforms that we wanted to bring in for the IT industry, the consulting companies, startups, freelancers, the telecom industry, and the handset manufacturers, we are largely done, or at least at a cusp of unlocking this potential, which inshallah in 4 weeks, when a new government comes in, will be able to take to its full potential as this happens. Before I conclude, and I have young people here, I hope that you go out of this hall with a degree of optimism and hope. I know that this is a generation that we haven't done much for. Many of them are disenfranchised, angry. I see all of that on social media also. But we really need to leave our young people in this country with hope. I think the primary reason for existence of governments is to be an agent of hope. And I hope that all of you leave with some optimism, with some hope for all the work that is going in to make sure that our IT exports grow to tens of billions of dollars, our economy is back on track, and that the path that we chose for ourselves about 5 months ago, volunteering to work in an interim government to try and get these long due reforms done, are carried forward for you, and that you get reintegrated in the economic prosperity of the country. I want to conclude. A lot of people don't know this. I make most of my speeches in English, but I used to be a Urdu debater for most of my school days. So what I want to do is leave you with a poem by Faiz, who's one of my favorite poets. And it's an important poem. It was important when it was written. It is important today. It is called Dua. So this is a prayer for the young people of this country. आइए हाथ उठाएं हम भी, हम जिन्हें रस्में दुआ याद नहीं, हम जिन्हें सोज़े मोहब्बत के सिवा कोई बुत, कोई खुदा याद नहीं। आइए अर्ज़ गुज़ारें के निगारे हस्ती ज़हरे इमरूज़ में शीरीनी फ़रदा भरते, वो जिन्हें ताबे गरां बारी अय्याम नहीं, उनकी पलकों पे शबो रोज़ को हल्का करते, जिनकी आँखों को रुखे सुबह का यारा भी नहीं, उनकी रातों में कोई शम्मा मुनव्वर करते, जिनके कदमों को किसी रह का सहारा भी नहीं, उनकी नज़रों पे कोई राह उजागर करते, जिनका दीन पैरवी किज़्बो रया है, उनको हिम्मत कुफ्र मिले, जुर्रत तहकीक मिले, जिनके सर मुंतज़िर तेगे जफा हैं, उनको दस्ते कातिल को झटक देने की तौफीक मिले। इश्क का सिर्रे नेहा जान तपा है जिससे, आज इकरार करें और तपिश मिट जाए। हर्फ़े हक दिल में खटकता है जो कांटे की तरह, आज इजहार करें اور خلش مٹ جائے. تھینک یو.
Thank you, sir, for your contributions to the IT sector. It is now my utmost privilege to invite the Honorable